Bore da. My nephew and his wife are expecting a baby before the end of this year, and they will take our clan on to the next generation. And they already know the gender of their child. She's going to be a girl. It's amazing how today people can know so much about their unborn child. We have our scans and so on that can reveal so much to us. However, when it comes to Jesus, the Bible foretold that he was going to be a male. And Isaiah 53 gives us a glimpse into the life of Jesus way back in the 8th century before he was born. And I want to draw your attention to that particular 53rd chapter of Isaiah this morning and just share with you some truths about our wonderful Jesus, the Messiah. First of all, Isaiah speaks of his humble origin. Listen to him in that second verse. He grew up before him like a tender shoot and like a root out of the dry ground. This speaks to us of his humble origin and his poor parents. The King of Heaven wasn't born into a rich, wealthy, prosperous family. His parents were just ordinary folk, and they could not afford the luxuries of the day. And when they travelled the long journey to Bethlehem during the birth of Jesus, they could not afford to book in advance in one of the town's great hotels. Yes, he was a root out of the dry ground. Isaiah speaks of his humble origins. Then Isaiah speaks of his growth and development. Verse 2 again, he grew up before him like a tender plant. He didn't arrive on the scene of time as a mighty warrior robed in royal garments. He didn't come into the world with some pomp and ceremony, but he came as a babe, born in one sense in obscurity, and he lived the first years of his life as a refugee. He grew up before him as a tender plant. And then Isaiah speaks of his rejection and disapproval. Verse 3, he was despised and rejected. We turn our backs on him and look the other way when he went by. He was despised and we did not care. You see, the New Testament confirms to us Jesus' rejection time and time again. Matthew 2 tells us that he was rejected by Herod. Mark 8 reminds us that he was rejected by the Pharisees. Luke 4 reminds us that he was rejected by his own villagers. John 19 reminds us that he was rejected by the angry mob. Acts 4 tells us that he was rejected by the Jewish Sanhedrin. And John reminds us, although the Word was made by him, the Word did not recognize him when he came. Even his own land and among his own people, he was not accepted. And then note that Isaiah speaks to us of his sorrow of heart. Verse 3, a man of sorrow and familiar with suffering. He was someone who grieved over men and the state of the human heart. A man of sorrows. Then Isaiah speaks to us of his severe suffering. He was oppressed and treated harshly, yet he never said a word. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep is shearer before his shearers. He did not open his mouth, but he was wounded and crushed for our sins. He was beaten that we might have peace. He was whipped and we were healed. And Scripture reminds us of his suffering, how he gave his head to the crown of thorns, how he gave his eyes to weep tears for me. He gave his back to be whipped and plowed for me, his cheek to be slapped for me. He gave his side to the spear for me, and the list could go on. Isaiah then speaks to us of his triumph and exaltation after his severe suffering. Isaiah moves on to his triumph and exaltation. The will of the Lord will prosper in his hand. Therefore, I will give him a portion with the great. And then, of course, Isaiah comes to a conclusion as he speaks of his priestly ministry. For he bore the sins of many and made intercession for the transgressors. And thank God this morning that we do have indeed an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous. We have a sympathetic high priest, one who pleads our cause before the Father in heaven, Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God. And we knew, or the world rather, knew so much about him. The Jews rather knew so much about him before he entered the scene of time. Yes, and so this morning we lift our voices in praise.